There is something profound in the act of being vulnerable, something that transcends mere exposure. To be vulnerable is to stand at the edge of uncertainty, to face the unknown with the rawness of your authentic self. It's not comfortable. It's not safe, but in that discomfort lies the seed of courage. And in that uncertainty lies the possibility for growth, connection, and transformation. And the fear talk happens all the time because if you lived your life, you have to listen, if that makes sense. Think about the moments in life that have truly mattered. The times you felt your heart race, not because of fear, but because you dared to step into something meaningful. These moments often came not from perfection or invincibility, but from your willingness to show up, flaws and all. Vulnerability, as frightening as it can be, is not weakness. It is, in fact, the truest form of strength. Only when we allow ourselves to be seen, fully seen, do we tap into the potential for genuine connection and authentic living. Right? And that's where there is, right? That's where there is in your life. There is only potential when those two things are acknowledged and privately integrated. There is a strange paradox in life. The more we try to protect ourselves from pain, rejection, or failure, the more we isolate ourselves from joy, love, and fulfillment. The walls we build to shield us from harm also become the barriers to what we most desire. It is in lowering those walls, even at the risk of being hurt, that we create the space for life to flow freely. As the saying goes, a ship is safe in harbor, but that's not what ships are built for. As Christians, we are charged with reaching others to love and light their fire, and that's why God called us here, to lovingly help. You were not built to stay confined in a bubble of invulnerability. You were built to navigate the open seas, storms and all. But let's be clear, vulnerability is not about recklessness or airing every insecurity to the world. It is about discernment and bravery. It's about saying, here I am with my imperfections, my doubts and my fears, but also with my hope, my strength, and my resolve. It's about taking off the mask and letting your true self breathe. Vulnerability is the willingness to engage with life without guarantees, to extend your hand knowing it might be rejected, and to speak your truth even when your voice shakes. And you will find tremendous mothers within any of your fantasies. Even with me as a mother, no clothes whatsoever, abundantly, 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 and believing that life will be good and will. Some might argue, why should I risk being vulnerable? Isn't it safer to keep my guard up? And yes, it is safer if safety is your ultimate goal. But safety often comes at the expense of depth. A life lived in perpetual safety is a life half lived. To truly live is to risk something. To risk failure in pursuit of success. To risk rejection in pursuit of love. 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 It's easy to confuse vulnerability with passivity, but they are worlds apart. Vulnerability is not about surrendering to circumstances. It's about embracing the truth of your humanity while striving to rise above your limitations. When you own your vulnerability, you take control of your narrative. You no longer hide in fear of being exposed because you have already chosen to expose yourself. There is liberation in that choice, a kind of freedom that cannot be found in hiding. Consider the people you admire most. Are they the ones who seem untouchable, distant, and flawless? Or are they the ones who show their humanity, who stumble and rise again, who admit their struggles yet persist with grace? True leaders, true innovators, and true companions are those who are willing to say, I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to find them. I don't always get it right, but I'm willing to try again. One of the most remarkable things about vulnerability is its power to create connection. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you give others permission to do the same. You open a door that says it's okay to be real here. And in that shared space of authenticity, relationships deepen, trust flourishes, and walls come tumbling down. Vulnerability, far from being a weakness, is the foundation of the strongest bonds we can form. We often resist vulnerability because we fear judgment or rejection. But here's the truth. No one can reject you more profoundly than you can reject yourself. The harshest critics often live in our own minds, whispering doubts and feeding insecurities. When you embrace vulnerability, you silence those inner voices by saying, yes, I'm flawed, but I'm also worthy. Yes, I've failed, but I'm still here. Yes, I've been hurt, but I choose to love anyway. If I have accountability, vulnerability is the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming. It requires courage, not because it's easy, but because it demands that you confront your fears head on. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else is more important than fear. When you choose vulnerability, you choose to live with integrity, aligning your actions with your values and your life with your truth. We live in a world that often glorifies perfection and invincibility, but these ideals are illusions. No one is perfect and no one is invincible. The pursuit of those false ideals leaves us chasing shadows while the real treasures of life pass us by. It is in our imperfections that our humanity shines brightest. It is in our struggles that we discover our strength, and it is in our vulnerability that we find our courage. I can't tell you how many of my enemies have deceived me into believing they're better. But the moment I begin to realize otherwise, it's when promises start falling apart with my heart. The Japanese have an art form called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold. Instead of hiding the cracks, they highlight them, turning the object's flaws into its most beautiful feature. That's what vulnerability does for us. It takes our broken places and fills them with strength, resilience, and beauty. It reminds us that we are not defined by our scars, but by how we choose to wear them. It is a mark of leadership and courage to be sure of who we are, whether it's truth or lies. The uniqueness in our stories reveal the immortality of our flesh. So I urge you to take the risk, be vulnerable, share your story, even if your voice trembles. Open your heart, even if it has been hurt before. Take that leap, even if you're not sure where you'll land. Because in those moments of vulnerability, you will discover not only your courage, but also the incredible capacity of life to meet you with grace, meaning, and connection. The world doesn't need more people pretending to have it all figured out. It needs more people willing to show up as they are, with all their messiness and magnificence. It needs more people daring to be vulnerable, daring to be real. Because when you choose to live that way, you don't just transform your own life, you inspire others to do the same. In the end, the courage to be vulnerable is the courage to be human. And there is no greater strength than that. There is a quiet but profound truth that many people shy away from. To truly live is to embrace vulnerability. It's a truth that can feel unsettling, even terrifying, because vulnerability means stepping into the unknown, exposing yourself to judgment, rejection, and failure. But it's also the birthplace of everything meaningful, of creativity, of love, of resilience, and of freedom. Without vulnerability, you are not living. You are merely existing, trapped within the walls of your own fear. We are conditioned from a young age to avoid the discomfort of vulnerability. We're taught to be strong, to hide our weaknesses, to never let anyone see the cracks in our armor. But strength, as it's often portrayed, is a facade. Real strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the willingness to face it head on. It's not about pretending you're unbreakable, but about choosing to stand in the world fully human despite the risks. As one philosopher said, courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Think about how much of life's beauty comes from vulnerability. Every time you reach out to someone, every time you share your dreams, every time you take a risk, you are opening yourself up to the possibility of failure or rejection. And yet, it is in these moments that life feels most alive. Without vulnerability, there is no love, because love requires the risk of opening your heart. Without vulnerability, there is no growth, because growth demands that you step into uncertainty. Without vulnerability, there is no freedom, because freedom means letting go of control and embracing the unknown. But let's not romanticize it. Vulnerability is hard. It's uncomfortable, even painful at times. It requires you to confront your fears, to face the parts of yourself that you'd rather keep hidden. It requires you to admit that you don't have all the answers, that you're not perfect, that you can't do it all alone. And that's terrifying because we live in a world that often equates vulnerability with weakness. And so how do you build a practice and performance of vulnerability with weakness? We're told to toughen up, to fake it till we make it, to put on a brave face no matter what. But the truth is, pretending to be invulnerable doesn't make you strong. It makes you brittle. The more you try to shield yourself from pain, the more you close yourself off from joy. To embrace vulnerability is to acknowledge that life is uncertain and unpredictable, and that's okay. It's okay not to have everything figured out. It's okay to make mistakes, to stumble, to fall. What matters is that you keep showing up. What matters is that you keep trying. Vulnerability is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of courage. It says, I am willing to risk being hurt because I believe in the possibility of something greater. And here's the paradox. The very thing we fear most about vulnerability, being seen as weak or inadequate, is the thing that connects us to others. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you give others permission to do the same. You create a space where people can be honest, where they can let down their guard, where they can truly connect. Vulnerability is the glue that holds relationships together. It is the foundation of trust, the spark of intimacy, the lifeblood of community. You might wonder, what if I open up and get hurt? What if I fail? And yes, that's a possibility. Vulnerability doesn't guarantee a happy ending, but what it does guarantee is a life lived with integrity, a life that is real and meaningful. Because even if you fall, even if you fail, you will have the satisfaction of knowing that you gave it your all. You will have the knowledge that you had the courage to try, to risk, to dare. And that is a kind of success that no one can take away from you. So it's important to remember that vulnerability is not about being reckless or oversharing. It's not about exposing every part of yourself to everyone you meet. It's about discernment. It's about choosing to show up authentically in the moments that matter, to the people who matter. It's about being honest with yourself and others, even when it's difficult. Vulnerability is not about being naive. It's about being brave. It's about being brave. It's about being brave within yourself. It's about being brave and sharing within yourself and in the group without expecting to be alone. There's a profound freedom that comes with embracing vulnerability. When you stop trying to control everything, when you let go of the need to always appear strong or perfect, you release a tremendous amount of energy. You stop wasting time and effort on maintaining a facade, and you start focusing on what really matters. You start living from a place of authenticity, and that's where true freedom lies. One of the most beautiful things about vulnerability is its transformative power. It has the ability to turn pain into purpose, fear into courage, and isolation into connection. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you discover strength you didn't know you had. You realize that you are capable of handling more than you thought, that you can face challenges and come out stronger on the other side. As one poet put it, the wound is the place where the light enters you. In a way, vulnerability is the ultimate act of rebellion in a world that demands perfection. It's saying, I refuse to be defined by my fears or failures. I refuse to live a life dictated by what others think of me. I choose to be real, to be honest, to be me. And that is a powerful choice. It's a choice that not only transforms your own life, but also inspires those around you. When you live with vulnerability, you show others that it's okay to do the same. You become a beacon of hope, a reminder that it's possible to live boldly and authentically. It's worth asking yourself, what kind of life do you want to live? Do you want a life of safety where you avoid risks and stay in your comfort zone? Or do you want a life of meaning where you take chances, face your fears, and embrace the unknown? Because meaning doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from stepping into the arena, from daring greatly, from choosing to live fully, even in the face of uncertainty. We face our fears of the world, the darkness and crawling all the time, and we love that. Life is too short to live behind walls. It's too precious to waste on pretending to be something you're not. The courage to be vulnerable is the courage to be alive. It's the courage to take the hand of fear and say, I see you, but I won't let you stop me. It's the courage to look at failure and say, you're not the end of my story. It's the courage to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am enough. So, step into your vulnerability. Lean into the discomfort. Embrace the fear, the uncertainty, the messiness of it all. Because on the other side of that discomfort is freedom. On the other side of that fear is strength. And on the other side of that messiness is a life that is rich, meaningful, and truly yours.